some snow and ice events, no issues with those other than the guttering problem that we're having. We are awaiting an estimate. I can't unfortunately give too much information because we don't have any accident reports involving Unit 11. This was a weather-related accident in the midst of the snowstorm. They had just left the station at Station 2 out on TT. We're pulled out on the 50, and there was a collision with another vehicle that hit our ambulance in the side. Problem being that it hit it in a structural cross member in the actual box, the patient compartment box. So it's I'm anticipating that box is probably going to have to go back to the manufacturer to be evaluated as for its structural integrity and so forth. So it'll be out of service for a while. The damage itself doesn't look that bad, but you know, there's a lot of stuff under there that we're going to have to get more information. Is definitely needed. So I will update the board as we find out anything on that. Let's see. The other damage, unfortunately, I don't have much great news in my report tonight, but the northwest door at Station 2 was damaged. The door did not fully open and basically caught the antenna on the roof. The bottom section of the door did get bent a little bit, and it yanked the antenna off the truck. Nothing else on the truck was damaged. That was an easy fix. The door, I don't know if we have, I don't think I have that official estimate. It's actually came, but it's not going to be cheap. I'll put it that way. Those are all glass doors out there. This is the first accident we've had since that station opened, so that's pretty good. But like I said, I don't want to guess what that estimate's going to be this time, but I'll get it to the boys. We did have a DVR failure. We have DVRs at all the stations. Everybody knows what DVR is. These DVRs are the same as what might be on your hopper at home, except they're multi-channel, and that's because we have a multitude of cameras at each station, so they are more expensive than just your Walmart DVR. Ryan went down, ran every diagnostic he could on it, and found that the unit was in fact dying, dead. It wasn't recording on most of the channels. I think there was 2 videos left, if I'm not mistaken. So that is going to have to be replaced. The cost of those is around $500, give or take. Yeah, it's an anticipated replacement. It was about 5 years old, which is about what we get out of, especially something that records 24/7, 365 like that. So nothing unusual about its failure. Community and public relations. We did have a Democrat article from the 9th that the board gives PCAD gives community service awards by faith, and that was a nice little article about us helping out with puppy dog. We are working towards integrating that CAD that's budgeted for this year. We've started the ball rolling on that. A lot of moving parts though. Most of it's very techy, so it'll basically come to the board as an announcement as we have now integrated CAD into our reporting system. I don't have an ETA on that, but I'm looking at generally we should be able to get it set up within a month or two. So I don't see that taking too long. I want to let the board know that we are meeting with Mr. Davis probably already knows this, but we started a meeting with our TCD coordinator. I don't know if that's her official title over there. Their TCD coordinator, Bothwell, coordinates all the activities centering around stroke, STEMI, and trauma. There's a lot of information sharing with a trauma center, as I've talked to the board about in the past. So this was exceptionally nice, especially nice because we were able to meet with her as well as the administrators and directors of other ambulance districts in the area, as well as the program director at U3, all get together and kind of share our ideas and thoughts about how things are going. It's a nice meeting we're planning on doing on a monthly basis. So that's a very good means of communications. If something needs fixed, we can address it very, very easily. And we've all known each other for a long time, so that really helps too. We get all get along great. Education, Justin Cross is working with Dr. Gus to update our medical protocols and procedures. This is an annual, if not more frequently thing. It's definitely an annual thing, but Justin's went through and completely reformatted some stuff, and there are some significant changes that will be coming out and approved by Dr. Gus here real soon. And most of that's procedural and some medication doses. There's nothing groundbreaking that we're doing. Probably nothing really newsworthy, but just so the board knows those do get updated frequently. I did attend and I attached a couple flyers. Paige Wolf and Woolberg's Executive Institute and ABC 360 conference the week of the 7th. I guess that's already been 2 weeks ago. It's always an excellent conference. It's lots of lawyers who we've actually used their services in the past for different items. But the conference really focuses, the Executive Institute, as you can see on here, is mostly a lot of HR issues and executive issues. The meat and potatoes of the conference, however, is compliance, privacy issues, how to avoid fraud, what happens in a lot of these cases, what's going on in the industry now as far as what's being audited, what will get you in trouble. It's a very, very good required. We have to have these CEUs to recertify our privacy and compliance officers. We as in Jamie, Hoover, and myself. But it was a great conference. Very good information, and they're always up to date. They give us updates on any kind of sort of changes that are taking place with CMS or other billing issues. Probably some of them that stand out this year is going to be, there's a lot of buzz about surprise billing when it comes to helicopter transports. There's some possible talk about that, some of that bleeding over into EMS as far as us being able to balance bill. Some big issues on the horizon, but I don't know how far it'll get. But like I said, it's mostly informational updates as well as how to stay out of trouble when you're doing any sort of billing or compliance oversight. So, where is that? Nothing pending as far as purchases contracts. We do have 3 out right now. 1 paramedic out on maternity leave, another paramedic out on a non-work related injury for about 3 months, and one other one that is not work comp. These are all just analyzed. We don't have any current negotiations or pending issues with the local 5229, and really that's pretty much the end of the report.
Are there any questions for Eric? Sure. That paramedic, excuse me, that's out on non-work related. Is he compensated anyway or how?
He can take sick time since it's not work related. It's not work comp. He won't get a paycheck in that way. But he did have some sick time built up. Unfortunately, he's got to be out for 12 weeks. We do have a donation program. I think some people can donate some of their sick time with some pretty strict guidelines as far as that goes. But generally what happens is, since they're not traveling, they're not having to spend the money it takes to come to work and be away from home, they'll sometimes cut their hours back and just claim like 40 hours a week on their work comp time, maybe stretch out that sick time a little longer. So it's just unfortunate, but it won't cover them the entire 12 weeks. After that, there could be some light duty, just depending on how he does with his surgery and rehabilitation. So we're keeping our eye on that one.
Chief,
Sure.
when I know we have some employees that work at other EMS stations on their time off. If they're hurt there, how does that affect it here? I'm assuming they're covered under workers' comp at that location.
Correct. Whether they're full-time, part-time, doesn't matter. They're covered by that organization. Here, they just have to take FMLA, or we give them a leave of absence. They're not going to collect anything from us. So most of the people who work here work at other organizations are part-time at the other organizations. So, the bulk of their problem financially is going to be from here. But yeah, I don't know if that's what you're looking for there.
Yeah, I just wondered how that.
Yeah, they basically have to take a leave of absence from me.
Are there any other questions? Not, we'll move on to CFO report.
Starts on page 9 with the budget performance year to date. For January, February, revenue is up about 25% over what we had budgeted. I highlighted several things that are over 100% year to date in yellow, but you'll see when we look at the details that those are just annual items. but the timing might have been different this year than last year, so I think we're gonna be fine in all of those categories. As only a few of those are still yellow when we look at the details. Overall expenses are only about 54% of what we have budgeted so far this year, so we look good there too. Any questions on that? All right, you go to page 10, that is where the details are. And you can see there that ambulance and vehicle maintenance is slightly above where it should be after 2 months. Medical supplies, a lot of that is ordering, trying to keep ahead of all the supply chain issues that they're having with everything. There's just a lot of things that keep going on back order. So trying to keep ahead of that. Any questions on that page? The only other item I'm going to have is yellow, which we can't do a darn thing about, is our utilities, the gas. Our usage is actually down. It's just that the rate is up about 2.5 times over what it was last year. So, any questions on that?
It looks like the majority of the increase in revenue came from the phase 4 funding.
Yes, that's a lot of it. If you look at the year to date, we're actually above in sales tax and service fees as well, but the majority is that provider relief payment. Page 14 is about sheet previous year comparison. Any questions on that? Page 16 is the profit and loss previous year comparison. So you can see there too, the revenues up and again, mostly from the base payment. Fund payment. And then expenses are up slightly over last year too, which is in the ambulance operations, which is fuel, medical supplies, and our payroll. Page 17 is sales tax. So March, our sales tax was actually slightly down, only about $2,400 from the previous year. That's less than 1%. So they did change the timing. I think we talked about that of due dates, but when I looked at it, it didn't really look like the timing affected that too much. And I know I've heard from some other people that the retailers weren't aware that the due date changed anyway, so it didn't change much. So any questions on that? And the next several pages are our reporting period 2 of those provider relief funds. So during that period, we received $10,901.87. You only have to report if you receive more than 10,000. So we just barely had to report here. There's a lot of numbers here that show all of our revenues and our COVID-related expenses for all of these different time periods. The big part I wanted you guys to be able to see was on page 21 in the middle of the page there. It shows our lost revenue summary during this period of availability. So you can see there that cumulative lost revenues total was $332,219.64 for all of these time periods. And then you can also see down below in the financial summary how all of that gets applied to the money we've received. So basically, even with all the money we received up to this point, we still have $284,000 of unreimbursed loss of revenue for these periods. So that's the big takeaway here. We don't have to pay anything back and we still have excess loss of revenue. Any questions on that?
What's the loss of revenue calculated?
So you can see here, it's calculated based on the change in every quarter versus what it was in 2019. So pre-pandemic year and then all the pandemic quarters. Any questions? Page 24 through 30 is our monthly report from EMS. And you can see how over time everything's kind of just changes just a little bit each month. No big changes here. Our cash per trip is down a little bit versus what it was last month. Net collections are up just a little bit, 5.3%. Any questions on any of that report? I think somebody had asked, this last meeting or the meeting before, about what we had in AR and what we had in collections. So since we switched billing companies, you can see what the AR is there on page 30. $1,647,862.89. And then at the collection agency, we have another $772,000 at collections. So we're right at 3.1 million in AR just for that time period. And then since the beginning of the district, because AR has never been written off, we're at 9.2 million. So pretty high. And probably a pretty high percentage uncollectible of that. Questions on that? Page 31 is our bank balances as of March 17th and March 3rd. Standard monthly ebb and flow where we're up over the last period since we received our sales tax. And then year over year, we're up 742,000 for the same period. Page 32 is the cash reserve analysis. I changed this a little bit last time and split out what it was in total months cash in reserve, which we're up to 5.93 months. But when you take out everything that we have budgeted this year for capital, just the general checking account balance, we're about 4.3 months in cash reserves. Any questions on that? Pages 33 through 35 is the check register. Any questions on those? Pages 36 to 39 are the current bills. The details are pages 37 through 39. You'll see that name again, Page More. We engaged them to do an external claim review for us, and we started that process. So this is the 50% down to start the process. We've already got our claims selected and collecting all the data to provide to them to review. So it's moving along there. Any questions on any of those bills? Not that is.
Are there any questions for Jamie? I'd like to take a motion to approve payment of the outstanding bills. So moved. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Committee reports, strategic planning committee.
Essentially, everything's listed out as bullet points, as hopefully everyone's aware, after having a chance to look at this through the work session. everybody should have a pretty good idea of what each of these categories are, as well as there is further descriptions in back as far as on page 47, yes, starting on 47. There's a little bit more information for each of those sections in there. You can see it starts out with, the renewal, bylaws, branding, getting down into mission, viability, education, secretary, treasurer. And I think the agreement was that, the understanding was, I should say, that we will take some time after I presented that to them and hash it out. So if there's something that doesn't like, it needs to come out or be amended, we can do that tonight. I think we've pared it down pretty well. I think, again, I want to thank the committee for all the hard work since we started on this project. It's a lot of information to take in. I think we started with, it makes you feel better. I think we started with around 120 pages of stuff. So that was much pared down, taken off of a lot of different EMS services and other corporate agencies, hospitals. Trying to take all the best information, get it in one nice little condensed version here. If there's any questions on those individual sections from 47 through the end of the board packet, I'd be glad to do my best to answer them, or have anyone that was on the committee answer them if need be. So with that, I'll leave it to the board to go through those items. Green or red light.
We will move on to unfinished business for work comp.
It is on page 40. So it all looks good. The big change there from last year to this year was really due to that experience modifier being down. That's where we save additional funds on the bid. So it all looks good. If the board wants to approve that, we also need to approve paying the collateral amount that's on page 42 prior to April 1st. Any questions on that?
Take a motion to approve. Work comp.
So moved, Mr. Chairman, with the caveat that the $2,403.40 be approved by the board for payment by the date contained in the quote.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Move on to the strategic plan, and we'll start with the bylaws. We can vote on it individually. So we'll start with the 5-year renewal and review cycle. Motion to approve.
Yes, Chairman. I've been on 2 strategic review things, one with the chamber and one with our school. And we had stakeholders involved in it. I was wondering if it wouldn't behoove us to, as we go through this over the years, to include some stakeholders, whether it's a public meeting and anyone interested to come in and do it, or invite certain people from different segments of the community. If that, I'm wondering if the board thought that might be something we should look at.
I'll volunteer. I think the chief did a pretty good job of trying to encompass some of the leaders, such as your fire chief and your police chief. I think, didn't you?
Sure. Yeah. We've all been talking about this for a while. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It is, we're part of the community. We should definitely engage the community moving forward.
Well, I know that doing a strategic plan is hard work. I mean, I remember them sticking stuff up on the walls and everyone inputting, and I mean, it was several meetings, and
It can't be done on one computer screen, I can tell you.
No. no, and it really can't be done. I mean, it shouldn't be done with just one person either. I mean, you need a lot of different angle looking at it from different viewpoints. So I don't know how to put it in there that that's what we would. I don't know, that would go into the recommendation on the bylaw there, that we would include some stakeholders in that, taxpayers. I don't know how we'd incorporate it. That's what the board wants to do.
In the draft that everyone has had a chance to look with, the timeline would be a perfectly good place to put that in there. You know, it mentions when we're going to meet, what we're going to do when we meet. Just simply add that in as part of that timeline.
Okay.
Essentially, to if I may, just so I can get the wording right and be done with it. When we do our quarterly meetings, to invite community shareholders, healthcare organizations. I know there's some verbiage for that elsewhere in the report. It leaves me where it's at right now, but just to include them in the strategic planning process.
And I was thinking of taxpayers also as stakeholders, since they pay the tax. I don't know how many would be interested because we hardly ever get any comments. So, you know, I know we don't get too many views of this, do we? So
I think our partner agencies would be really willing to do this. I know, like I said, Buffalo, obviously a much bigger organization, much bigger strategic plan,
Right.
but there was a lot of engagement there that can be had, especially with our emergency services agency specifically, but not only that with, and again, it talks a little bit about the community outreach in this report as far as working with the schools and any other education.
yeah, I would think state fairs, community college might be a good one to have.
Yeah.
And on the 5 years, is that standard?
5 years is what I found for EMS. Some go out 10. I think it'd be really difficult.
Yeah.
Now, some of our equipment replacement plan, that goes out a little further because some of those items last a little longer, but the actual plan itself, 5 years is pretty standard from what I found as far as whether it's a governmental board such as this one or even a corporate board, you kind of want to look at where you're going every 5 years. So that's
Because in 5 years, you know, the current board could all be gone. You have all new,
I hope not.
all new people. I mean, it just, so I didn't know if 3 would maybe be better so that a few that come on that start this year would still be here. It'd be their final year on it.
If you did it too soon, a lot of it won't have time to evolve.
I just wondered if that 5 years was kind of a standard thing.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay. I'm okay with that then.
So we have a motion for 5-year renewal review cycle with the inclusion of stakeholders.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The mission statement. Any questions on that? I'll take a motion to approve that.
Which one would we be approving?
The mission statement.
Which would be,
It's number 2 in the bylaw.
Yeah, but I mean, the two suggestions, either or.
The compassionate care while providing excellence in service or exceptional care for every patient every time.
I like the first one.
I'm inclined to go with the first one also.
I'm inclined to go with the second one. And again, you know, and I'm gonna put a caveat on this too. I think the chief tried to get some employee input on this as well.
How did that go?
Well, one of these two I thought of, and the other one came up, I think the chief kind of thought of. We didn't get much input, and unfortunately that was, so. And I would like to just add that I know that the chief has talked about, and I have believed it would be a good idea, that whatever this mission statement is, and I know that if I'm successful in my reelection, as I've always done, I try to previously, you know, before I decide something, try to think about, does it fit into our mission statement?
Right.
So we want something to be able to be simple, and as well as where I was going with this is probably something Chief's gonna want to put on the ambulance. So.
And that's, not to jump ahead, but branding, if you look at branding, I like number one because it encompasses what we're looking at to do the branding, because you got compassion and excellence in service. You took the last three letters during your mission.
You know what, I like number one too. I want to make this board look like we're in unity here, and by gosh, number one is great. Because it does, I mean, both of them match up to what. The synopsis.
I'm okay with two. My only issue with it is the ellipses.
Well, those are incorrect. The actual one should be exceptional care period. For every patient period, every time period. The ellipses you put in there just the way it was captured, and yeah, it's again, I mean, either one of them, again, I think capture the real mission of what we're trying to do here, so.
I got to witness two of our employees that worked at a neighbor across the street. She had fallen, an elderly lady, she had fallen in the bathroom, very small bathroom in the older house. And she wasn't able to get up, and her daughter was with her, and her daughter couldn't budge her at all. And she called us and said, "Hey, can you come down and help?" And Cheryl and I got there, and you know, you could only get about 3 people in that room, in the bathroom. And the two guys that came in, I was so proud of the way they cared for her and were very considerate, and, you know, making sure she was comfortable. And I mean, they just did an outstanding job of making her, and how they got her up, I still don't understand. I mean, they were both rather large, and they got her, and together they were able to get her up and into the bed. And I just saw that compassion, and I have a feeling that that happens more often than not with our people that they pick up. So that's why I kind of like that. I mean, it's exceptional care, but that compassion, that's a strong word, and I think it's appropriate.
So is there a motion for one of those?
I'd make a motion to accept the first one.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Primary duty and philosophy.
Yeah. On the phrase, "we shall embrace sound business and clinical management," I know what clinical management. What does sound business look like? Sound business practices. As far as the working of the employees and ambulances and care and all that. I mean, they aren't really concerned about the cost of the Band-Aid or anything. I mean, they're just trying to take care of those people, whatever they need to do, aren't they?
Well, I mean, they do factor in the cost of the equipment they're using. I mean, you can't help but know, you know, there's not a paramedic here who doesn't know how much those monitors cost. So I think everyone is cognizant of the costs incurred and all the, you know, pitfalls of reimbursements and all the issues that we have in EMS. But, you know, I think as long as everybody's striving to keep not just as a fiduciary type issue, but as a, you know, sound business practices, taking care of your customers, taking care of your staff, taking care of the community at large. So I think that's what I was looking for in there as far as a business would go.
And
You can't just
who is we?
kind of got to look at everything.
Who's we?
The district. I mean, it's,
And the board,
this would be update to the bylaws, it's, you know,
Yeah.
the board and the district as a whole.
I'm just asking. I mean,
Yeah.
that's-
and I think the sound business part to me, that would be,
Apply to
that
us.
would apply to us.
Correct, yeah.
That's what I was-
Yeah.
It's true.
I think our fiduciary duties that we.
Oh, yeah. I just wondered how it worked down to the ranks.
Yeah. If I may, a lot of the strategic plans I found kind of, instead of using his primary duty philosophy, that fell into like a lot of the vision statements for other corporate boards. Some EMS boards use a vision statement, and I noticed that was one of the things lacking in the bylaws. So that's kind of what this is. Yeah, it's for everybody.
So is there a motion to approve that?
Move to approve. Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. D, frequency of board meetings, work sessions.
Well, I got something to say on that. I feel if we went to one board meeting, we'd be here a long time. Long times. I've seen it happen on school boards and I don't want to. And I also feel the board loses a little bit of touch with what's going on. Once a month, maybe.
I would just say the opposite. You know, we're the only one out of St. Charles, outside of St. Charles that meets, that still meets twice. But to me, the value of the board comes in the second part down here where you get to work sessions. And, you know, it's not to say that you won't have two meetings, but one regular meeting. I mean, look how many times the meetings only take 20 minutes or 40 minutes. And if you had, and it takes the staff a lot longer to prepare for these meetings because it's the same repetition every time, but it still takes time. But whereas if you had a work session like the work session we had last time, you could speak open, you could speak free, you could hash out all the areas that you couldn't necessarily do in a public venue, public meeting. But then when you get them worked out and you come back to the next meeting, then you present whatever's on the agenda and you have a meeting like we're having here today.
I would agree with Mr. Brown to do it twice. When you go to a meeting that isn't open to the public, it looks like you're trying to maybe hide something. I think we need to try to do everything we can in a public atmosphere so that we're not hiding anything. I wouldn't want us to be accused of
We're not
trying
hiding.
to hide
We're
something.
not hiding.
But we don't take minutes and it's not posted.
There was a public now.
Oh, I know there was. but we didn't. There was nothing to show what we came at, what we did aim at.
But you don't take any action in work session.
What I think we could
So the
do,
only action is taken in a public meeting like this.
what we could do is have the financial one meeting, like the first or the second, whichever one of the meetings works for Jamie. When she had, which is more convenient. The chief could do one report unless something else came up at the opposite one. I don't know that they would have to do it every single meeting. We could change when they gave it and the number per month that they gave, so that we can keep things open and we can talk about things. I mean, that's, if we put it on the agenda, we want to talk about it like we did in that session. I don't put it on the agenda. Let's do it. So I'm for continuing having two meetings a month. Now we make a motion that we continue having 2 meetings a month.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll do this roll call since there's kind of,
Well, there might be any
Division.
more discussion. You might have.
is there any further discussion?
Could I just to clarify something? You mentioned an abbreviated report, say for one of the meetings would be for Jamie's, the bulk first stuff and abbreviated. I really like that idea because like you said, it does take a long time to prepare for these. And many times I am just repeating myself over here. And just by the framework of my report, through my own doing. So I really like that idea. That was suggested at the work session. Full meeting and then a shorter meeting was how it was suggested. But the chief's report is not something the board really formats. That's me. So if you guys are okay, I just wanted to clarify a full report and then update its abbreviated report on the second meeting. That would do me wonders. I don't know how that works.
You do bills at both meetings, and I mean, I wouldn't have financials for the previous month until the second meeting. So, sometimes I still don't have it, 'cause I'm still waiting on things, but for the most part, the second meeting is when we have those financial reports, the bulk of them, so.
And if we don't have any agenda items on that second meeting, then we don't have a meeting. I mean, we don't have to meet if there's nothing on the agenda.
Other than the chief's report.
Bills.
Right.
Yeah. Bill's at it.
But if they're in that first meeting of the month, and then the second meeting, there isn't anything on the agenda, then we don't need a meeting.
I've never seen that happen.
No, right, but if it did, then we just
I
don't.
mean, there's,
Yeah.
I'd rather have a 30-minute meeting than a 3-hour meeting.
Yes, I agree. And say one more thing, I just feel that for myself anyway, that this cutting it to one meeting, we kind of lose track of what's happening with board members. And for me, I kind of need to know, I want to know those things. So that's all I'm saying.
So we have a motion and a second to continue with the 2 meetings a month.
I just want to add my 2 cents for it, and you hear my vote, but, when we compare ourselves to other districts, the tough thing I have there, rightfully, they're probably getting business done in an efficient way, but we're much younger than those other districts. This really district is just 6 years old when you think about it. St. Charles is, I think, 3 decades. So, I mean, they're a little head step ahead of us, and I just think either way, your way would be a great efficient way to get down to the thumb brass tacks of understanding what's going on and being able to shove stuff across the table. But the formality of the fact of being able to have accurate data at 2 formal meetings is a big plus. It really is. And I think it's important, especially with some of the bigger things that we have on our plate right now. We decided to go after. So.
I could add just one more thing. When going through our bylaws, I found we already have bylaws written that allow for committees and work sessions and stuff like that. I think it's something that we could greatly take advantage of, especially with new construction projects or anything, that second or first meeting out that works out. So I just want to throw that in there. It's something we haven't really used much in the past, but they're valuable. That's all.
Any further discussion? Now, motion the second to continue with the 2 meetings a month. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll move on to branding. The ACES card.
You want to discuss that from all that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's this is another thing we talked about in the work session, and I'm basically just saying this so everybody who wasn't in the work session can hear me. One of the things that any organization needs is some sort of thing that makes it unique to themselves. We've got a lot of wonderful things in PCAD, a lot of great staff, great ideas, but I kind of wanted something that said a little more than Pettis County EMS District on the side of us. And the quickest way to do branding is to keep it short and sweet, kind of like that mission statement. It coincides, as somebody mentioned earlier, pretty well with the mission statement. This is not a redesign of the ambulance. It's not an expensive, artistic thing. It's probably going to end up being maybe 8.5 by 11, something like that, with the words ACES, with the words accountability, compassion, and excellent service out to the side of it, with the little EKG with the heart in it. That's non-proprietary, and we can use it tomorrow if we want to. I thought it'd be a nice way to kind of make those ambulances our own a little bit. Those are words that the crew's gonna remember and really get behind. You get that buy-in. That's the important part, is getting employee buy-in, believing what they're doing more than just a Star of Life and keep back 500 sheet. So it's fairly minor, but it's something I want to bring to the board.
And I'd like to add, see if we might want to tie this in, Chief. I know we've talked too, I've recognized there's nothing on any of our ambulances that say 911. Did you ever think about wanting to brand the ambulances with something small that said 911?
We could do that, and it is, the graphics that we put on the ambulances, it's not a lot of, I don't even know that it costs us any more money. I mean, everybody's got their own print shop out there, so it's really not a problem to put that on there. We could even put 911 PCJC and support a fellow organization, if we want to. So,
Yes,
I'm all about dressing up, but since it is on the ambulances, those big changes to the ambulances need to be discussed by the board, not me, or I have a bunch of guitars and stuff on. But that's it.
That thing with the card and with our past administration here, everybody knows we got in trouble over that gap.
Okay.
And to me, it's just my personal opinion, I know what that, or these phone calls. Because that, and it'd probably be a good idea if we hadn't had that past problem. I mean, that's just,
I didn't know.
that's just my take.
Good point.
I know there was a lot of hard work went into that. No. And I mean, I understand, but I can hear the phone now.
I would like to look into some more examples for that to present.
That would be fine, yes.
So do we want to table this item?
Just a question.
Sure.
So what if you went with the logo? Of course, it takes away the ACES part without the A.
Yeah.
But just the symbol in the center.
In other words,
I'd be fine with that. I just feel it would cause us some grief.
I'd be more than happy to come back with some stuff to present the board at a later date. That works. Yeah.
even if it's the same thing. Like Steve said with the
Right, reformatted to not have any sort of gambling connotations. Right.
Well, and that brings us right back to what we previously adopted, the words in the mission statement, compassionate care while providing excellence in service. I mean, that's, we just, we're missing the word accountability. So, you know, do you want to maybe go the direction of doing something with that with regard to a logo of just,
I'd like some time to kind of.
Yeah,
look at
swallow
some
it down.
different- Some different options for us offline.
we'll table that for now and certainly bring back some ideas to us. On to mission viability, in-house building plan.
So this would not be, this would have to be a long range plan. Mr. Fritz and I talked about it a little bit this afternoon. I mean, it took 6 months just to transition between building companies. So to build an in-house building department, I guess you would call it, would take at least a year to get that done. And with this current year, we're looking at new cost data reporting to CMS. I wouldn't want to change anything during this year to make that reporting any more complicated than it's going to be, as it's the first year anybody in the country is doing it, even though we were selected as year 2. So you know, this would be a long range thing, leaning more towards the end of 5 years than the beginning of 5 years. So just so you guys are aware, that's not, if you guys approve this, then tomorrow we start pulling people in here. That's not, that's not the plan.
That's the glory of having a 5-year plan. You know,
Right.
it's gonna be a year 2, 3, and you'll be finishing year 4, you know, and the little steps along the way.
and it helps us understand too, and keeps in the backs of our minds for some of us that will be around for overlapping elections, that, you know, we got to think about space too, before we start selling off property or getting rid of this building or that building. Because we're going to establish a couple offices and there's no room across the street really at this point, the way it's set up. So it would be something probably, if it did start with the assets right now, it'd probably be something would go into this building. So, but that's something to think about, you know, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
I'd make a motion that we adopt that in our 5-year strat plan.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Maintain a 0.5 sales tax.
I'm against making it part of our strategic plan to include tax money in. I mean, the realities of how we fund ourselves and how the economies in healthcare work out likely mean that no matter what, the only way we'd be able to fund ourselves is through tax money, but I just don't like having it in our mission statement that we want to advocate for. You know, in my tax money is paid by people who are willing or not willing to pay it, and I just don't like it. If you want to call it the optics or whatever, I just don't like putting it in our mission statement or strategic plan.
No, I would agree with that. Because you may want to raise it if the state says you can go up to 1 cent. I mean, based on what goes on in the next few years, we have no idea. It may need to go up. And this almost sounds like we're locking it in. I think it needs to, you know, we should have the option each year, like we do right now, and vote and talk about it. We've got it in our calendar, right what month, but each year we're going to talk about that.
This was something that the chief added to it, so if you wanted to, and then you wanted to run through this on this chief.
Yeah. And essentially, there's a lot of discussion in the draft plan that everybody got about where we've been, where we started, where we're at, and where we're going. And I agree after, you know, hashing this over the past couple of weeks, that putting any sort of number on it is kind of painting yourself into a corner, you know, whether it's up or down. But there is a lot of information I think that's important historically and current and future trends, you know, such as problems with billing reimbursement and so forth. But it's a worthy section to have in there, but maybe instead of just a half cent, just put maintain adequate funding for the district to, you know, support our mission statement or something. It's to support our mission, where it's vague enough, but supportive of the rest of the document. That would be my suggestion.
You know, we are historically in the state of Missouri, we're the only county in the state of Missouri that takes a source of public funding for EMS as a sales tax. We've never tapped into the people's property tax. From the very beginning, that was the idea that we wanted to pursue, because property tax was kind of one of those sacred things you just stayed away from. Because people were getting tired of their property taxes going up. But they wanted something to happen with regard to a need for prevention. So we went with the sales tax and we spread it across the deal. And the great thing about the sales tax is it does, at the times of inflation, it does rise and help us cover our increased costs and stuff. So it does kind of help us adjust accordingly. So I just think we should be very prideful that we are the only district in the state of Missouri that has no property tax. And that's important.
Well, and we say that now, but it depends on the outcome of the Windsor election, because we will take the property tax. If the sales tax is not passed in Windsor,
and we still,
because it is property tax.
we collect that under a contract, but as far as,
Right.
That's not us. I mean,
that's not us.
Yeah, but they forward it.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, they could have it cash on hand. I mean, as far as the way that we originally designed this district, before that Windsor ambulance agreement, it was, the law was written that you could only begin a ambulance district with a certain levy of property tax. So, with some help with some EMS lobbyists and our board attorney, I went over and testified over in Jeff City about 12 years ago, okay? And we got the law altered, because we were one of the last districts to form the state of Missouri, so they altered the law to allow us to begin on a half-cent sales tax. The law allowed the levy, and then if you had the levy on your property tax, you could go to the voters and supplement with a sales tax, which many districts in the state of Missouri are now funded by a property tax from the original beginning, and then a sales tax. So, I mean, we're sitting in a pretty good position. But you're right, it could go up or could go down. And that's a very good point.
It doesn't matter the vote, but my personal preference would be an ambulance district entirely funded through non-tax means, but ignoring the economic realities of that sort of thing. But I just don't want to do that.
I agree.
I mean, it's not even our district's fault. I mean, but the way that the laws work around healthcare, it forces you to be, people can just not pay us, and there's literally nothing we can do about it. So it's really hard to have a business model where people can just choose not to pay you. Obviously, I understand that. I just don't like saying, hey, our mission is to take your tax money. I just don't.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
The text in red under number 2 says maintain half-cent sales tax. I would suggest that we strike that and change that to maintain funding to assure a viable mission-ready ambulance district in accordance with the mission of the district.
Sounds great.
Somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
And I've got all that.
I'll make a motion to that.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Increase in staffing.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that the chief wanted to bring this to light and as well as the CFO. With regard to the last sentence, is that a commitment to this would mean additional ambulance and 3 crews. So there would be a financial impact for the board to consider. This would be the consideration with regard to call volume increases. So
For clarification, this is dependent on
Not
call volume. This is dependent on call volume.
Yes.
yes, right.
I don't remember, it was for an increase of every
3,000?
1,300,
Yes, 13.
1,300. And that'll happen in probably within the next 2 years.
Yeah, we will likely surpass that 1,300 around the same time if all goes as hoped, I should say, with any additional station plans. By the time that station would be built, that theoretical station would be built, it would probably be time to look at putting a new crew on based on call volume. Things change, the economy shrink. Hopefully ours doesn't, but that would be the signal that's time to put on.
And Chief, since you've been with the district, you've had just the 6 ambulances and the 2 ones, or since you've managed the district?
Since the very beginning, since I've been chief, we've had, yes, the 6 and 2. Since the very beginning, we started out with 4, but we've tripled our call volume since we started.
Okay.
Yeah, look, just on history, it looked like we added, that's where that 1,300 came from.
Mhm.
So about every 1,300 calls is when you had to add a new, so you're not running them all the time.
And then, like I said, there's other metrics you can look at as far as, are we properly staffed, system status level 0 reports. Sure. Those are a direct reflection. If you don't have any, you're probably overstaffed. If you have a whole bunch, you're understaffed. So there's lots of other means we can use to say, are we adequately providing service to the district? So, and when it comes to that time, I would not just assume, it's time to, let's do it right here. But I think it's a good standard to have.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Without measurable performance goals. Yes.
I don't remember, Chief, how long does it take to get from downtown to North 65 or over to the airport area?
I don't have those 2 numbers. The number I do know that it takes to get from downtown to Sedalia to the south city limits on 65 is about 13 to 14 minutes in average.
Yeah, because you got a lot more traffic that way.
Not fair traffic. Yeah, that's correct.
But
Well,
going north, we don't have as much traffic because it's residential.
true.
See,
Yeah, and the west side, we also split got a geographic boundary between there and Station 2 at this point. So they come in so far, we go out that far. Whereas from here, all the way over the west side of town, it's all us at headquarters.
Yeah, 65 north and south and 50 west is always more traffic. So we're pretty close to hitting it over here, I guess, on this side.
Yeah.
But the Walnut Hills area and that's out there that we aren't even getting close to that.
Yeah. If I can, if I add something, this was also one of the things that after we had our session, we kind of talked about, again, the risks of putting hard numbers in this report. It may not be necessary, and it's a good goal. It's an absolutely good goal to have as far as my performance, the crew's performance, and those are measurable performance goals. But I don't necessarily think they rise to the level of a strategic plan, because otherwise, again, you paint yourself in that corner that says you must respond. And then what happens if you don't? So it's I've kind of rethought.
wouldn't the strategic plan be a prudent plan for us to tell the public of what our board decision is in response to you telling us that response times of what we've studied, response times west and south of town are unacceptable? And that recommendation is the construction of Station 3, correct? I mean, that's just.
And again, it's a 5-year plan and hopefully it'll be built within the 5 years. And then this would be, this is the reason why we're building it, is to achieve this goal.
Right.
So that's why I think it should be in there.
Well, absolutely.
But you won't be held accountable to it until we get the other one built. And it's not every time, it's gonna be an aggregate.
Oh, yeah, traffic's gonna make a big difference.
Right.
So is there a motion to adopt those measurable performance goals?
I mean, do you have a recommendation? for us?
I think the fact that it says, thank you, yes, I think the fact that it says implementing a response time-based criteria for construction and staffing of satellite. That's kind of the caveat of that. So we're, like I said, even if we adopt this plan today, if the board chooses to, doesn't mean we gotta meet those standards tomorrow. It's just a goal for where we place stations, how many crews stay at that station, et cetera. So we can stay as it is. It's just, like I said, I was looking at putting hard numbers in, didn't want to pay ourselves.
I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Education, first responder network.
This is more of a goal for management and administration, obviously. It fits into the strat plan that supports our mission. Improve our first responder networks and expand them. There's no real identifiable goals in this, as you can see. It's just, we should move towards supporting that. It just shows, again, it just shows our philosophy and the plan of the district is.
Who would those people be? And I don't know what their purpose would be to be your advanced.
First responder?
I mean, it's.
Well, one example would be AED placement throughout the county. Buffalo's Where Red campaign has raised tons of money and placed lots of AEDs throughout the county. And has the potential to save many lives. Those are all first responders. And they're the ones who make a difference, especially in cardiac arrest or major trauma situations. Those people save a lot. Pettis County in general, just the county, I just mean all of us, has always been lacking in that area. There's been some talk of improving that amongst other agencies, and I can't speak for them, but I think PCAD should and could play a part in that, in the training and recruitment of those people, whether they're medical first responders or helping out, say if the fire departments need some help with training their first responders up to a certain level. I think that's something we definitely want to be a part of and work with them. There's shared resources are always cheaper, using the same medical director, for instance, help streamline things. There's just lots of advantages into aesthetically, but just showing the support. There's also a lot of grants out there, so I don't think we're looking at a big, like an investment type situation. It's more just a just showing support for that intent to create a more robust first responder.
I mean, could we be talking about like volunteer firefighters? What are we talking? I don't know what.
We're talking about medical first responders. And most of them are probably going to end up being firefighters and volunteer firefighters.
Gotcha.
However, Sedalia Fire is a paid department, but they do have first responders. They do a lot of their in-house training, but we also work with them. We support them, they support us. There's mutual benefit there. With county doesn't have a medical first responder program yet. They could very well do that, but they might need some assistance in training. That's one area we could help out without a whole lot of hassle. First responder courses, certification is about a 40-hour course, so they don't take, it's not like an EMT class that takes 6 months, it takes a week to train somebody, or 1 night a week for a month and a half. So it's not a huge commitment, but it really helps out with our response and saves lives. At the end of the day, that's what our job is. So it's a cheap way to get people out there and respond to those patients quicker than anybody else can. Your neighbor is always the closest one to. So that's it.
Is there a motion to approve the first responder network goal?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Additional training staff.
I don't want to jump in unless.
Go
I ask.
away.
So, okay. Unlike the last item, this one's got some money behind it, but it also has potential for income. Right now, we've got some instructors that can do certain alphabet soup classes, BLS, CPR, ACLS, all those nifty abbreviations. However, as I was just mentioning, EMT class, it is probably the best way we have to recruit staff into EMS and specifically into PCAD, because they stay with us for the duration of that course. They do their clinicals here. By the time they graduate and become licensed EMTs, we know them. And those are the best people to hire because you raise it, you know everything about them. So an EMT program is important. I don't want to saturate the market. I think that we should grow our own, if you will. Problem is I've only got one full-time educator, and teaching an EMT class monopolizes his time for a good 5 to 6 months, which means our other educational endeavors, such as our in-house training, it's always been that way. It's not great. Plus, there is a demand out there for EMT classes for other districts. The fire department sometimes needs us to put people through EMT class, so there's a market for it. It's not maybe not a huge one, but there's a market enough to offset the cost of it. I would really like to consider maybe for next year's budget proposing, like I said, this is not a right now thing, but maybe putting it in next year's budget, part-time or full-time additional instructor into our training program. And there are people like that out there available.
So basically your staff would be trained at the cost of this educator, but if another district came in, they're gonna be paying for that class.
Yes.
To help offset that.
Absolutely. EMT classes, I might need some backup from Jamie on this one. EMT classes aren't huge money makers, but they're not a money losing proposition like a paramedic class is horrifically expensive to put on, but EMT classes usually come close to breaking, if not make a little, maybe lose a little, but they're close.
So this wouldn't be a paramedic doing this training.
No, it would be EMTs or paramedics can teach those EMT classes. The only thing you just have to be licensed at the level that you're teaching at. So you can teach down, you just can't teach up. Hope that makes sense.
Is there a motion to approve the additional training staff?
I'll make that motion.
Is there further discussion?
Sounds like it's a way to get some people interested and possibly become employees at a later date.
Yeah.
Gets them in, they meet people, they see the operation.
And like I
Sounds like
said,
it
of
could be a
course,
win-win.
this of course is a budgetary item anyway, so it's not, that would be
Year to year.
conceptual, I think.
And the nice thing is, like, I'll just use the hospital as an example and the radiology program out here. You know, they come through here, they round, you got them, a lot of them are local and you gotta keep them. You know, RNs, they're more mobile right now, so, but it served us very well.
Any other discussion? Now we have a motion, a second to approve the additional training staff. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Field training officers.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I was looking at both these things, and on the handout that we went over in the work session, I just had so I don't lose the idea. There was an actual dedicated room set up as the back of an ambulance to train. If we have one of our older ambulances that are too many miles on it, couldn't we kind of stationary it and use that?
Yep, some services do that, they put them up on blocks, let your imagination run wild, some services put hydraulics on there and bounce them around like they're in the real world, do all kinds of things, but yeah, it's
Well, that would be
basically,
less expensive than trying to turn a room into a
yeah,
back of an ambulance.
yeah, and you know, usually where we've been in the past historically is we wear an ambulance out and it gets sold as an ambulance, but there's no reason to say you couldn't, in today's economy, you could probably sell the chassis out from under that box fight, I guess, but yeah, we've thought about that a lot. The only restriction to that is we don't have anywhere to put it right now, so.
Or if there's an accident and it costs too much to repair it. then-
Yep, yes, sir. I love that idea. We've talked about doing that for years. It's just been space limitations.
That makes sense to use it
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Get
Thank you.
used to the environment they're gonna be working in.
Field training officer. Gary.
This is an ask. As we grow, we used to do, every person at PCAD used to work out at the same station. Starting all the way back at the Ddr Fire Department to where we moved down here, or expanded to TT, we expanded to Windsor. And at some point, when you're trying to train people, normally the way we train is they'll work a shift and then they'll train when they get off. Because a lot of them, as we know, don't live in the area, so it's easier for them to just get off, get their training. Unfortunately, when we're all spread out like that, it's kind of like herding cats. We mitigate that with online classes, but we have daily things that change. And just an example are road closures, safety issues, train track issues to where somebody's working on this or that and there's only one way around it, or a new item or equipment update or a medication, different vendor that looks different. So there's almost every day a shift briefing that's done by an FTO. Problem is we've only got one FTO per shift. FTO stipend is 80 cents an hour for someone to be raised up to the level, and FTO is kind of it's the first person you meet when you orient at the service. So they're very, very vital, important part of our staff. We try and put our best, most interested instructors and educators in those classes, people who really have a desire to do it. But again, I only have one per shift, and right now I've got, it's very hard to get those briefings out every morning. They also, if you're not familiar with the job description, have a lot of other duties. We're falling behind on CQI, which, you know, from the beginning, I put in a lofty goal of 100% CQI, which is unheard of in ground EMS. And that's falling behind a little bit just because we don't have enough people to do it right now. So we're probably about 8% caught up with CQI, but it's getting harder and harder to stay up. So long story short, I need 2 FTOs per shift. It's an 80%, excuse me, not 80%, 80 cents per hour stipend.
You're not adding staff, you're just adding difference.
Just giving.
That would be budgeted.
Yeah, it'd be for three people. Yesterday. Right now, the individual that's out on the 12-week leave, got about 10 weeks now. He was actually an FTO, so of course, Murphy. So yeah, that's an ask at this point. Moving forward, especially once we start getting new stations, there may be an additional need for more FTOs out there, maybe not. But I think 2 per shift right now is a minimum that we really. Numbers to tell you how much that would cost a year at this point.
It's about $9,000 for the 3 we have, so it'd be another.
9,000.
Is there a motion to approve the additional field training officers? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Public education.
I think I kind of already addressed all this in conversations we've had. This just further emphasizes the district's commitment to working with our healthcare partners, senior centers. You know, we've got a new community center here in town. There's all kinds of opportunities for us to get out there and do PR, help all the way from, you know, letting little kids go through the ambulances all the way out to helping out with nursing programs and doing being a part of our area. University sends students down here. Everybody sends students down here. This is just basically continues that tradition that's never been really put in ink before. So not really a money thing, but just says what the district supports, again, to support our mission.
I would suggest maybe even having an ambulance go to elementary schools. Kids, I mean, the fire department does that
We do.
almost every year, and I don't remember you coming to St. Paul's. Maybe
Call them. But yeah, they, you know, most of the time, those organizations call us, so they coordinate it with, as you probably know, like teacher days and things like that. They'll make a day of it. So unfortunately, the last couple of years, we haven't done much of them for that, which shall not be named.
Well, only a couple of them might partner with the fire chief and show up on their fire drills during fire prevention week.
Yeah, I won't know it, I'm not there.
Yeah, that's something we go at, you know, more aggressively, especially with more FTOs and things like that. Some people have a little more time to do it.
We also have what are those boxes?
AEDs.
AEDs.
Yeah.
And, you know, they showed us how to use them when they first put them in,
Mhm.
wherever it was to put them in. It's in the gym. But I don't know if there's anyone there that really knows how to use it now, because there's turnover, they forget.
Yeah.
I don't know if do you know how many are in the area?
We've been looking at a way to map that out. Originally, when we first started operations, there was a big grant. I want to say 10 or 15 of them were dispersed throughout the counties. And then, like I said, Lawful done a phenomenal job of really getting them out there all over the place. There's new legislation that says any pools have to have an AED available. So that's any hotel with a pool or any building with a pool has to have them available. So they're all over the place. The good news is, to your point, is you open them up and it tells you what to do.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the nice thing about AEDs. There's no, you know, you're covered under Good Samaritan laws if you do use one. And you're not
Yeah, it
trained.
talks to you, yeah.
But we do get questions all the time from churches are probably our biggest ones. They'll get one in and want us to come talk to them, which we do. They call, we go square away on them. So yeah, that's all the time we're doing that.
Okay, I was just curious on that.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve public education?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Secretary.
What?
Think that
Oh, I know.
goal is potentially to give Katie the title of secretary, since she actually does the work.
I'm not sure that I want to do that. It seems that we need to have a secretary and a treasurer on our board. Just my, simply because I wouldn't want an employee to have that responsibility in case something, I mean, it should fall on us, not an employee. I mean, she's doing it
Yes, she does it all.
and she does a good job with it, and I don't want to fire her by any means or have her not do it. You know, so I went, but keep doing it. So, yeah. Because when you're involved in a meeting, it's hard to do notes also because you're in the discussion. I've tried that before. And it's difficult. So it's good to have somebody that's detached from the conversation.
Is there a way to make, I mean, does the title secretary come along with the sign off on the, I mean, we sign off on the.
Yeah, I
minutes
sign all the
after.
minutes, yeah.
Yeah,
All of it basically would happen. She would sign the minutes, but that can't happen until we approve them, so.
approve the signature of the minutes.
So what we do is the meetings, the minutes from this meeting will be assimilated and we'll approve at our next meeting. So they don't officially become public record or anything that she signs off on as public record until we approve as a board. So that's how that.
And then she brings it to me and I sign it.
Okay, currently, but
Yeah.
we're talking about changing that.
No, well, she would sign it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed. I'm opposed to that.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I guess we're going to go into the next step is that I'm going to recommend that we do the same with the treasurer's position. Jamie Lubling does everything that the treasurer under statute is required to do, and then everything else plus, okay? So the bylaws and the Missouri statute read that it doesn't have to be a board member, and there is nothing that would change security wise or anything other than just the title. That's simply it. So, I'd make that recommendation that the board ought to consider Ms. Lubring to be the board treasurer. I think some of the districts in the state of Missouri have moved to that, is that in today's world, things have gotten a little more complicated. And the duties of the treasurer, obviously have gotten hugely complicated. So
Let's deal with the secretary first.
I guess I'm confused with why we would make the change. I mean, functionally, she already is secretaries. Right? I mean, I'm just worried, like you said, I'm worried about oversight a little bit with like.
The board oversights everything the secretary does, regardless whether it's her or him.
well, and just the opposite.
She doesn't make the agenda, she just compiles it.
There are some other legal things that I've signed that you and I have signed.
Yes, but you don't, neither one of us sign anything without board approval.
Right. It's still our name, my name on it goes into the file and it stays there. So years from now,
Theoretically,
Look,
though, the secretary could change every year, and then you've got to go through all that to make that happen, where if she's the permanent fixture there.
that's,
So is there a motion to keep the secretary as is, or to,
I make a motion to leave it as it is.
is there a second to that?
I'll say.
Is there any further discussion?
just further discussion,
Yeah.
okay, on the things that require 2 signatures. So then who's gonna be the 2 signers? So the chairman. Or is there anything that requires 2 signatures?
We require 2 signatures for any payments, which
That's the
our
treasurer.
signature is digital, but it can be the treasurer, the chair, or the vice chair who.
But the 2
that's who's been
signatures he's
assigned.
talking about is like property purchase or sale or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's designated that it has to be the secretary and the chair.
In some of the bank things, you need the signature of the secretary, we do. anyway.
That's the treasurer. the chair
Yeah, we don't,
and vice chair.
actually, the secretary doesn't sign anything at the bank. I mean, I don't think you've ever signed anything at the bank. Because you're not a signer. And I'm sure it's all to do with bylaws and,
Ours has to do with who can sign, so the secretary says that, signs that can sign and now John. But that's the only thing we have to sign off on by the secretary, by the board.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember how that came back around, you know.
Is there any further discussion? If not, there's a motion, a second, to keep the secretary as is. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. So that motion fails. Is there a motion to give Katie the duties of secretary?
I just voted on it.
No, you didn't. The motion was on the floor to keep it the same, that motion failed. So we need a motion
Oh,
to give her those. Is
I'll make that motion.
there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion?
This is just to put it in the strategic plan, is that correct?
Yes.
It's my understanding, it's not to actually, the board's actually vote to change that, right? That was my understanding.
Sounds like it would change when the board reunites after the election.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? If not, there's a motion second to give the secretary duties to Katie. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
aye.
Motion passes. Treasurer. Mr. Chris has already explained some of that. The thing I believe if we give you the title, we would have to create a board position, financial officer or something for that other signing of checks and bank documents.
And I do the job, and I don't care which way you guys go, but I think there are some things that a board member should do as treasurer, and I feel like, if I was on the outside looking in at the board, I would feel like if they will be on the board and they have the fiduciary duty, why wouldn't anybody on the board want to take that responsibility to have the oversight? And I think to me, the treasurer is a little more difficult because there is the signing, there's other things that go along with the treasurer duties. And then, like you said, you're gonna have to have either finance committee, you're gonna have to have, something else for oversight. I mean, I'm gonna do the same job, whether whoever's treasurer, if it's me or somebody else, I'm gonna do the same things I do regardless. So to me, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But the signing thing is important. I think that the treasurer be somebody on the board to do that. I still would not want to sign checks. I would still want the board to be approving those items.
And the functions under the statute of Missouri, I mean, there's, I think, probably a half dozen of them, maybe roughly, but, she performs those duties. and rightfully so, she should have the title. For the purpose of that, is she performs those duties, and if for God's sake something goes wrong, she's the one that handled it. So she should be the one that, for whatever reason, say, hey, you know, what's going on here? I just think that's the right way to do it. I don't prepare any of these financial data, but the treasurers in smaller districts, they count the pennies. They go to the bank before the meeting and get the statement and balance it up and bring a handwritten deal to the meeting, type deal. We're just a little different. We're a little bit bigger, and I think it's time that we make our treasurer make it our CFO. So
For the same reason on secretary, I think that is the representatives of taxpayers, we're elected, we have oversight, we should have that responsibility, and it stops with us. So I think we need to leave it the way it is and have a treasurer on the board that also then signs and talks to Jamie. And I mean, it protects the employee. So I think we ought to leave it the same, and I would make that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
I just don't want to lose any oversight, and based on what Jamie said, it sounds like we might. Is that correct?
Well, again, like,
We would have to create a position.
like Mike said also earlier, with the former issues that we've had here, I think that would probably be a prudent thing to stay.
I think it'd be a prudent thing to add a second eyesight besides myself. I mean, how many, when we look at the oversights on the bills, how bills get paid around here, there's 3 eyes that go on before every bill gets to the point where this board approves it. Okay, that would not change. What we would do is we simply take the treasurer title and the statutory duties with that and move it to Jay. Okay. As far as the oversight, if I'm reelected, I'm going to continue to meet every Tuesday, as I've done with Jamie since I've been on this board, at 2 p.m. And I would ask that this board, in the motion that would follow this one, if this one fails, that I would ask that we create the position of 2 finance officers in lieu of the treasurer being handed over to Jamie. So that's there's a reason that the law opens those 2 positions, opens it up to someone that is not a board member. There was a reason behind that. So, and I think that with the oversight mechanisms we have in place, they won't change. And this is just the smart thing to do, to clean up of who's doing what, who's responsible. Because I know that our fiduciary duties, whether we have a treasurer, a chairman, or a vice chairman in front of our name, our fiduciary duty under law does not change by what we have in our bylaws. Doesn't change a bit. He is just as responsible as I am if something happens in this district that is derogatory and not on our personal behalf. We're equally culpable. So whether I have that duty or that title or not.
I don't know, if you have a treasurer and somebody is the person doing the deposits is taking money out, like, I know that can happen. It would go back to the treasurer of the board that's supposed to be signing, and they're basically saying, I agree with what's going on. And I don't think I would necessarily be culpable on that, along with the everyone else here, because I'm not the one that was supposed to be watching.
Well, I don't want I don't want to get anything and try to imply that I know what your legal exposure is on the board, but I know what mine is. And whether I'm treasurer or not, and I'm not any part of any bad thing that goes on, just because I have that thing, I mean, the absence of me not being there and oversight of everything that she does, like, just like you don't have complete oversight of the secretarial duties at all times.
No,
That-
but I
that
look
Katie-
at the minutes and
After the fact, right? So, and the same thing is with this board. I do not have the time or the ability to do the oversight that you're thinking that I do. I mean, I hope you understand how bills get paid around here and then how we do have current security in place.
you said every Tuesday you're there at 2.
I'm not talking about how individual bills are paid and how deposits. We don't handle any money. I don't personally touch any money, nor does Jamie.
Well, I do make deposits.
She makes deposits. I mean, we
When
get a
checks come
lot
in
of,
the mail, I do put it in the.
puts them to thing, but, I mean,
We may be saying close to the same thing, that we're responsible. And I think is having those titles makes it clear to everyone that we are the ones that are responsible, not the employee.
okay. Well, when it comes time then to define the responsibilities of this treasurer or to review it upon my reelection, it's a big load. And, I may or may not accept that nomination. So, you feel free to go on in there and dive in it if that's what someone else wants to do. I'm not saying that I would refuse it, but the person that actually does the work is the one that should have the title. And that's just absolutely it.
Well, if we pass this, we won't have to worry about electing the treasurer.
That's correct.
There's a motion on the floor to leave it as it is. If that passes, then stay as it is and.
Right.
As board members.
Could I have just one thing out,
Yeah.
purely out of context, not arguing the pros or cons, but where a lot of this came from, just so you understand why this is even in there. Both positions are part of what I was talking about in our work session as far as institutional management. Board members come and go. That's part of it. So, and I've seen that happen here. I think I've seen it happen with secretaries who are very involved and they get voted out of office and all that knowledge just goes away. So that's one pro to that situation. The other thing is there are generally, when it's done, when it's taken off the board as a board position, a financial oversight committee is formed. And on that committee, more importantly, there's a committee chair. So essentially you've got a treasurer light. There's always there has to be a chair of those committees. That's how our bylaws are written, I believe. So that is, I just wanted to provide that in context. That was kind of the thinking behind it was, number one, you have oversight. You can put as many people on that committee as you want. Obviously, quorum rules still apply and so forth. But those committees do have to be chaired. And you've got the bonus of an institutional memory type situation. That's probably applies more to the treasurer position than it does the secretary. I just want to add those for context, why they've done that. Thank you.
So there's a motion second on the floor to leave it as it is. Is there any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes to leave it as it is. Adopt the vehicle replacement plan.
So, so, I mean, we've talked about both the vehicle replacement plan and they kind of
working to do the equipment replacement plan, because the equipment replacement plan includes the vehicle replacement plan and the overall planning on actual costs. The vehicle replacement plan, Roy, do you want to talk about that? You always keep
I can talk about it. I don't have a copy right in front of me, but basically what you guys have is it's basically lined out where we replace heating units, whether it be fully replaced or remount every year. We're actually at the tail end of replacements. So in 24, I believe, will be the first year that we actually don't replace two vehicles, remount two vehicles. And so the price gets cheaper. It'll be that way for 6 years, and then we'll probably go back to replacements again. So you'll see the up, down, over time. But it's factored on. I tried to do mileage. If you actually look at the lined out, line by line one, that's in the actual back of the plan. Factored on 3,000 miles average a month per unit to try to get you some mileage. As it gets later on in the years, I quit trying because who knows that, right? But that's basically the nuts and bolts of it. I put the command vehicles in there as well. So replacement cost is, we're not sure how that's going to look as we get further in. Rough guess that your remounts are probably going to be 150,000. Open, so it's give or take. But this will hopefully keep us from over miling our ambulances and keeping us within the goal that we talked about a while back about getting rid of them at the 180,000 mark instead of keeping us to the 210, 220,000. And we kind of work on this. So you guys have any questions about any of it?
I would add that most of this vehicle replacement plan was an update of a prior plan that the board had already approved, that we'd gotten rid of sprinters, we got rid of some older trucks, so we kind of needed that adapted to what we actually had.
And then the actual numbers will be approved when we approve our budget. So,
And to give you some idea of how much money needs to go in those buckets.
yeah.
Is there a motion to approve that vehicle replacement plan?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Adopt the equipment replacement plan.
So the equipment replacement plan, like I said, it's just expanded on that. It includes the equipment replacement as well as, ambulance replacement as well as the equipment in the ambulances and all other equipment, so. Copy here. So we've got it broke down into vehicles, radio equipment, IT equipment, medical equipment, station equipment, and buildings. Now, this will need to be looked at every year, just like we have in the past. I mean, it's out here for a 15-year plan, but every year that changes a little bit, you know. Just like the ambulance, we have a piece of equipment that we are saying we're gonna need to replace in 2025, but it breaks down in 2024. We might have to move stuff around and fix something in 2024 that we planned for in 2025. The big place that this plan is lacking is the buildings. We've got some money budgeted to build a new station, but we've got nothing in here for major maintenance on any of our existing stations. You know, we put a roof on headquarters, but this building's gonna need a roof sometime. TT's gonna need a roof sometime. They're all gonna need, you know, HVAC at some point. There's gonna be major things that need to be done that we need to add to this plan at some point. But this is the nuts and bolts of what we have currently and when we'll need to replace it based on manufacturers' recommendations. If we can make things go longer, we will, but I think Eric said that some of those, the FDA says that's it, this is done. You have to do it.
With those intermediate ones, sometimes they last long. Stretchers, you know, we might get 4 or 5 extra years.
So this plan is updated every year.
Is there a motion to adopt that plan? Second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Since we have no new business, are there any announcements?
I had the thought, we have a custodian of records. It was Ryan. Is he still the official custodian of records?
Yep.
Okay. That isn't going to change.
He's got all the best spots.
Is that all?
The secure.
It should stay the
places to
same
store things.
with the change, because most of everything was IT related, it was being handled. So it will stay the same.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a reminder, April 5th, Election Day. We'll get a chance to say that again before we meet again. Vote early, vote often.
I already voted
Good deal.
because I'm working in the polls.
And I do have one announcement. So yesterday, we finally received our information back from Joint Commission on our trauma center. They had a few items that we need to send in a corrective action plan. They have 30 days to respond. If they approve those, then we will be approved and we will be resurveyed in a year. So.
So in April, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, and Lori, of course, Lori said we're gonna get it in before the Thursday.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I understood, did you approve the motion to make Katie the secretary? of this one?
We approved for to plan, right?
Yes.
Well,
She will be the secretary after the election, when the board.
The second meeting in April, I think. Or the first meeting.
First one.
Second half.
Treasurer wanted it.
Are there any further announcements? Now that take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I'll say.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.